Hi. Many of you ask the question, how can I stay conscious? So many people they know in their mind, rationally, and also from experience, some of them, that they are eternal beings. They know, yes, I am a soul, I'm consciousness, I'm eternal, I'm energy. They know that. And yet they find themselves every day again living from the ego, stuck in this personality, and they have to deal with their ego all the time. And by ego, I don't mean egocentric or selfishness. I mean ego identified, me identified, personality identified. Yeah, you with your personality, me with mine, in this body, with this personality, with this mind, with these experiences, with this history, and these beliefs, and so on and so forth. So what I notice is, and I'm also on a journey like everybody, right? So, and I'm going to share something with you there as well from my own experience. But what I notice is that for so many dear souls out there, and also light workers who also have a sense of their mission, why they're here, what they want, they still live from the ego state a lot of the time, and then they struggle with this. They say, I have done so much work on myself, I have realized so much, and yet I go out there and I get annoyed about this and frustrated about that, and this person is triggering me, and that situation, and then the news, and then this, and they find themselves in the ego identification, living from that. Now, every now and then they might come out and reflect on that and decide, I don't want to do that, I want to live more consciously. And then half an hour later, they're back in the identification consciousness. So the question, how do we stay conscious? How do we stay awake? When we have realized certain things about our own nature, about our own divine source and essence, how do we live that? And how do we keep that? How do we stay awake? Because this earth and this 3D life is really, really, really not helpful in staying awake. Now, that is only from the identification point of view, because from the perspective of us as consciousness, everything is actually a potential tool for staying awake. Now, but from us in our evolution, and okay, first I'm ego identified, and then I discover I'm more than that, and I'm greater, I'm my higher self, and so on and so forth, I'm a soul. Then it's more like, okay, this realization wants to be expressed, wants to be lived, and how can I keep this realization as a state of being? Because that's ultimately what we want, right? Now, many of us, okay? And I'm no exception to that. I'm the same. And I also have still both aspects, right? And so I hope that I can maybe give you a tip or a supportive suggestion that might help you stay more present and more aware in your daily life. And the first thing it requires, from my perspective, is the first helpful thing is that it absolutely requires from us that we make a decision. The decision. And this is also really hard, and I'm going to share with you why in a minute. We need to make the decision, do we choose to live as the ego identification, as the person with our history, with our connections, with our partner, with our family, with our job, with our mission, with our purpose, with our thoughts and beliefs and philosophies and everything, our experiences? Do we choose to live as that? Or do we choose to live as the infinite creator, energy, consciousness? And we need to make that choice. We need to decide. And this is, in my experience, yes, when we have realized we are more, it's like, of course I want to live as my divine self. Of course. Let me be the angel here, or let me be the divine here expressed through this body. Yes, this is what I want. Let my light of consciousness be expressed through this person. Yes, yes, yes. Okay? And then we join the world again. And what I have discovered, and I'm curious to hear whether this is the same for you, or whether you can relate to that. It is, we constantly have this ID, this identity behind us, with us. We have to kind of tag it along because it's there, okay? So I have Mel there all the time, as in the person, the personality, the human, and you have yours. And so it's not like all of a sudden, yes, I'm conscious, and there is the light of consciousness shining through all this, and then this problem of ego identification is sorted. It's like, no, that is still there, because it's also part of who I am in the greater scheme. It's also part of it. It's not separate. And so the task that I would give myself then, and that you could give yourself, is to fill this vessel with the light of your own consciousness, your own divinity, more and more and more each day, with the light of your love and the light of your wisdom and the light of your infinite intelligence, every day more and more and more. Now, one reason why I'm talking about this and where I see a stumble block is that in making the decision, who do I want to live as? There is a potential to maybe to want to have it all, to want to be both and want to live both. Which means that when I dug deeper into this, how come I live sometimes as the personality and sometimes I'm very, very clear in my consciousness state of being? What's the difference? Where does it occur, and what's the difference? And why am I not in one state all the time? Now, one obvious reason is because this is not why we are here. We are here to also be human, okay? And that's good, because humanness gives us a lot of tools still to grow. So not to reject that. But the other thing as well is that what I have discovered in a moment of enlightenment from my beautiful higher self into my little Mel self was that I discovered that I'm in some ways still attached to some aspects of the person. Meaning that if I really chose to live as my divine self, none of my history would matter, none of my experiences, not even the relationships, nothing would really matter, let's say in terms of my past, in terms of the family upbringing or my experiences, all that we define ourselves by, right? None of this would be relevant anymore, because if I define myself, oh well, I have learned this through these experiences and now I'm like that because, and so on and so forth, that's all story. And yes, it may all be true, but for the identity, my consciousness self, let's say my soul, has already known all this, has already learned all this and knows all this. So in that stage, it's not that relevant, but we do tend to be attached to our story and to our identity. Especially, like, it's important that we love ourselves, right? So we do love this, or we should at least love and be kind to our human self. And so there is a certain sense of attachment, and it's like, if we truly, truly live from the state of divine beingness, just this sense of I am, with no I am this, I'm that, and the other, just I am, the truth of everything, which is I am, conscious awareness, that's it, love and light, as the next step of conscious awareness in terms of attributes. So if I am, and that's it, I am nothing. Because there is nothing to attach to the I am or to add to the I am, which means the release of everything. And this is what sometimes can still hold us back in letting go of us completely, as in our identification completely, because we tend to be maybe fond of our attachments, fond of our life as this human, fond of our experiences, how we interpret what we have experienced, how we look at things, this complete detachment from everything that we have lived in this lifetime, let's say, up until now. Complete detachment can seem quite saddening, but only if we notice that there is still an attachment to parts of our story or history, maybe, or parts of how we see ourselves. I hope I'm making this clear. It's not that easy to talk about. So maybe you have that too, and maybe you can look at this too. If sometimes you're conscious and then you drift back into unconsciousness and you talk about yourself as in, yes, and when I was in 6th class and there was this, that, and you talk about yourself, maybe because you also appreciate very much what has happened and how you developed and what you shared with others and how you were. But it's still just the story of the human, meaning the perspective, then the identification and the bond with the identification is still there. So this might be something that holds us back. And then also, of course, coming out of the present moment. So that's the second thing, that we lose consciousness when we think ahead or when we think back, because then we're not in the now. And in the now, there is no past, no future. It is the now. And in this present state of now, it's much easier to be divinity itself than when we think of what do I have to do later, because that is again straight away associated with this human task that's before us, and the same when we look back. So in the present moment, and it means also that we need to develop the discipline to stay in the present moment. But if we're able to do that, it is much, much easier to stay in the soul state, to remain in the soul state of being, instead of constantly moving back and forth from human to soul to human to, yes, now I'm conscious again, now I'm unconscious. And there is nothing wrong with any path or how long it takes, but I find it helpful if others share their experience too and their maybe perspective, in that what we're looking for is to remain more conscious for more of the time or most of the time, then it's good to have some tools and to have some also insight into what takes me out, what keeps me out. And the same with the patterns that we have in terms of being triggered and responses. Being triggered always means being unconscious, always. And there is never a justification for reacting then. It just means that, not that there is guilt or anything, but it just means that once you react to a trigger, once you're being triggered even, the point of perspective was daily consciousness, was identification, human. Because your soul state is not triggered. But your soul state can then perceive your human being triggered and being annoyed and reacting, responding in a certain way. And your soul state, if you connect with that quicker, can then influence and accompany and guide your human self through it easier, quicker, so that maybe you can release it straight away, or you don't even have to get triggered, because the soul straight away knows, that was a triggering sentence. Human, remember, I don't have to get triggered because I'm in soul consciousness. I'm in my conscious state, awake state. So no need to be triggered, because only my ego self would be triggered. Yeah, the accumulation of my personality and my experiences and my beliefs and everything. And it does not touch me in the slightest, because my consciousness is elevated, is in connection with who I really am, or is reflecting who I really am, and therefore no trigger needed or even possible, because consciousness cannot be triggered. Consciousness is everything, knows everything, and is loving and wise and has no need for judgment. Trigger always also means I'm judging something that is coming my way here. And judging it in a non-preferred way, and judgment is not part of our true self. There is no judgment. There is just isness. We just are. Yes? I hope that this was helpful. Put your thoughts in the comments below if you want to. And also, if you have any further questions on this topic or another topic that you would like me to cover, please do so. I'm going to love you and leave you for today, and we'll talk again next time if you want to.